All right, we're back. Episode 2 of the Primetime Parlay. We got the Cowboys heading to New York to take on the Giants. Both teams coming in at 1-2. Cowboys, they lost a tough one at home against the Ravens, 28-25. They were never really in this game until the end. They had a fourth quarter surge, but they ran out of clock. So that was a disappointing loss for them at home in front of their fans. And for the Giants, they collect their first victory of the season against the struggling Browns. They win that 21-15. So they're trying to string together a little win streak here, and they come back home Thursday Night Football.
I'm just going to dive into the Giants a little bit. They came off a big win against Cleveland. We obviously talked about this game in our video yesterday. The Giants looked good for once. Daniel Jones kept targeting Malik Neighbors. We talked about that. He got 15 targets in that game, which is tremendous. He also scored 2 touchdowns. So the Giants looked pretty good last week against a team that a lot of people thought the Cleveland defense is actually pretty good, and Daniel Jones and the Giants put up 3 touchdowns against them. So for the Giants, that's positive for them. They had a really rough start. Obviously, Daniel Jones looked like his old self, being awful, but then he seemed to pick it up a little bit last week. So that's really good news for the Giants. Moving on to the Cowboys, like Pat said, we talked about this game as well. It was never really close until the end. It looked like the Ravens came out and just killed them in the game. Then they kind of took their foot off the pedal at the end, and Dallas tried to come back. I think this is going to be a massive game for Dallas. They need a win. The fact that they've started off their season 1-2, they've had really tough games. Even the win they had wasn't spectacular. Their record is 1-2. They're fighting with the Giants. Obviously, this is a divisional game tonight. It's in MetLife, so it's a big game for the Giants too. I think this is very important for the Cowboys if they want to even have a chance at making the playoffs by the end of the year. I think these are the games you need to win. You need to beat teams that aren't playoffs. In a divisional game, this is a game the Cowboys need to win. They need to play well. Their rush defense has been awful, dead last to start the season. You don't want to have Devin Singletary running all over you. Cowboys want to win tonight. They need to fix that run defense. They need to get their offense rolling like we've seen the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think for the Cowboys, they just need to find a way to get some early momentum. They got to get that sideline bumping. Obviously, they're on the road, so they're already going into a hostile environment. This is one of the rivalries of the NFL, I would say, even though, the Giants haven't played particularly well for quite some time now. But you've seen, all these running backs going up against the Cowboys. They just haven't been able to stop them. Obviously, it's a tough ask trying to shut down Derrick Henry, but he ran for 150 yards. I mean, some games you don't even see quarterbacks throwing for that many yards. That's their major issue right now. They also need to get CeeDee Lamb going. This guy has really not done too much. He's only got 1 touchdown catch, which he's the guy that you expect to get in the end zone every single week. So I'm really expecting him to be a huge part of the offense tonight. And Dak's just got to get the swag back for the Cowboys. He's got to make the NFL know that this team is not a fluke, even though, year after year, high expectations, and they find a way to ruin it. But similar to last week with the Ravens, they were coming in 0-2. Needing a victory. We talked about how tough the AFC North is, and that's exactly what they did. It wasn't pretty in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter for the Ravens, but they did enough in the first. And again, it wasn't the best clock management because Dallas was able to get back in that game pretty much very quickly because they didn't start getting into it until late in the game. Tonight, Dallas needs to take advantage of a team that has not a young offense, but I wouldn't say there's a lot of weapons there. You got to take care of Malik Neighbors. You got to find a way to make sure Devin Singletary doesn't run for however many yards. So we're definitely expecting the Cowboys to bounce back. And for the Giants, I mean, they just got a big win on the road, so they bring it back home. They've been able to run the ball pretty well all year long. Daniel Jones, 2 passing touchdowns last week, and they have their guy, Malik Neighbors. That's who they got to go to. Just get him the ball. Daniel Jones needs to make sure that he gets the ball to him because this Cowboys defense is very aggressive and they love the pick parade. Everyone gets in on the action. So it's going to be another fun one tonight, another primetime game, divisional matchup. I'm going to go into our primetime parlay here. So Copel, first leg, take it away.
All right, guys. So this is the part that I'm sure all of you were waiting for. So our first leg on this game, we're going to be going with a Giants player, and I'm sure you know who he is, but his name is Malik Neighbors. And we're going to be taking his receptions tonight, and we're going to alternate him down to 6. As of right now, we have 6.5 receptions from Malik Neighbors. 7 is plus money, but we're going to hammer 6. We want to play it safe here. He has gotten so many catches in his first three games, and also his targets have been absurd. His first game against Minnesota, who is like the number one defense right now, obviously under Brian Flores, he only had about five or six catches in that game. But then after that, he took off. He had 12 targets in the game last week, and the week before that, he had 15. So Daniel Jones is
18,
always looking his
18.
way. In the game against the Cowboys, where he had just two touchdowns last week, Malik Neighbors, they're obviously going to be going back to him again. And if they end up falling behind into a negative game script that we expect the Giants to fall into tonight, you're going to need to throw the ball rather than run it. And Malik Neighbors is going to be the target. So I think 6+ receptions, alternating it down is just a way to play it safe. And I think that's a great pick for tonight.
Yes, just simply don't fix what isn't broke. And Neighbors has shown that he was an excellent draft pick by this team. They've, had trust in him to throw the ball his way, especially when they need a big drive. 18 targets is absolutely absurd. That was a week ago in Washington. And even in a Minnesota game where they were really not in it the whole time, it looked like the classic Giants just getting smoked. Still had five for 66 yards. So he's definitely going to be a big factor on this offense. I also think Devin Singletary should have a decent workload tonight. This is a Cowboys team that has the worst run defense in the league. They average about 185 yards given up on the ground per game. So that is very bad. Also, Cowboys have the worst red zone defense in the league. Giants aren't the team that you think going to find the red zone, that often. But when they do, that's definitely something to take into consideration that this might not be a field goal game. This might be Daniel Jones continuing where he left off last week, finding Neighbors, and maybe Singletary even finds one as well tonight. So leg two, we're going to go to Dallas here. We're going to go to their star receiver, CeeDee Lamb. We're going to take him 70 to 75 yards. We're playing it a little safe here. He's a guy that really needs to get going for the Cowboys. Just found the end zone, once. And we think that the Cowboys offense, they really got to get going. And it starts with this man. They haven't been able to run the ball all too well this year. Dak needs to find his main target. They drafted him for a reason. And if he's not going, this offense is not going to do too much at all this season.
Absolutely. I agree with you, Pat. I think CeeDee Lamb is the focal point of this offense. Like you said, they are lacking efficient run game right now, which is a big part of how offenses operate in the NFL. So without the run game, you already have your quarterback to pass it way more than other quarterbacks. So CeeDee Lamb is going to have to get open a lot tonight. He also just got that massive contract that he was holding out for a while. So it's time for him to show up on the stat sheet and so that he's worth the big money. So I think that this is a big game, and obviously just something that you didn't bring up. And if you guys are a little skeptical on his yards being a little high, if you look at his games against the Giants, he's averaging around a little over 90 receiving yards a game against them in his career. It is a fantastic opportunity for him to really have a bounce back game. Me and Pat were talking, like, we expect the Cowboys to open up in this game. So it could be a really big game for CeeDee Lamb. If the Cowboys end up winning this game, he's going to have to be a big factor and a big part of the reason why.
Yeah, and they just haven't been able to run the ball. They don't even know who their starting running back is. Is it Rico Dowdle? Are they going back to Zeke, who actually has great numbers against the Giants in his career? He's found the end zone 11 times in 13 games, so that's definitely a positive stat for them. But this is their number one guy. You got to find a way to get him going, and I think, Dak is a quarterback. We all see him gets fired up, especially for the primetime games. Find your number one receiver. CeeDee Lamb, it's crazy to talk about, but this guy has the potential to be a future Hall of Famer, potential Super Bowl champion too, if things ever get figured out in Dallas.
Absolutely. So I'm going to move into my next pick for our parlay tonight. Go to another Cowboys player right here, and we are taking Brandon Cooks at 3+ receptions tonight. Now, you might ask why Brandon Cooks seems like a non-factor, but if you look at his games against the Giants in his career, pretty good stat sheet in the last couple of games against the Giants. Particularly the last time he played the Giants, which was last November. He had 10 targets. He hauled in 9 of them for 173 yards and a touchdown, which is awesome. He's averaging around 77.6 receiving yards per game against the Giants, so that's a lot. So we're not going to take his yards because we're afraid that if the Cowboys open this game up too much, they're going to go down and run in the football. So instead of doing that, we're going to take his receptions at 3. Right now, the line's at 3.5. We're alternating it down to 3 to play it safe. I think it's a fantastic bet, especially if CeeDee Lamb for some reason gets locked up by a guy like Banks from the Giants. We don't know if CeeDee Lamb will get involved or not. We're obviously banking on it, but even if he does get involved, Brandon Cooks for 3+ receptions just seems like free money. So we're going to hammer it.
Yeah, I agree with it. The line's minus 200. Four receptions is a lot for a guy that's not option number one, not option number two, maybe not even option number three. We got smoked with taking Gabe Davis 40 yards. That probably should have hit, but Jacksonville just looked terrible in that game. We're going to play it a little safe. Hopefully, Cooks can get 1 to 2 receptions in the first half. And again, we're expecting Dak to throw the ball and the Cowboys to be aggressive. The Giants give up over 300 yards per game. So Cooks is another guy that has to get involved for this offense to go. And then, the captain of this team, the leader, Dak Prescott, I think he's getting at least 2 passing touchdowns tonight. We're going to go with him to get over 1.5. Dak has a 12-2 record against the Giants. He averages over 260 pass yards, averages 2 passing touchdowns a game. This is an easy bet, I think, for us to make. He has 10 passing touchdowns in his last 5 against the Giants. He absolutely loves playing New York. He's in New York. He's going to take that energy from the crowd, take that hate, and he's going to find some of his receivers in the end zone tonight. For our fifth leg, we're going to go with Daniel Jones rush attempts. We're going to take him at 6. You can get him at 5, 6, or 7. We think 6 is a pretty safe play. Averages just under 6 per game against the Cowboys, and we've seen him run. He's not a Justin Fields, a Kyler Murray, any of those quarterbacks, but I think that he's a guy that they are comfortable with ball in his hand. We've seen him be aggressive, and if this offense struggles, which we tend to see against the Cowboys, I'm sure he's going to take off and at least run for a couple of first downs. The yards is a little high at 30, so we think that the rush attempts is a little safer. Daniel Jones is also 1-7 in his career against the Cowboys, so that's real ugly numbers. We think that the Cowboys are absolutely going to pick him off. They have an interception, at least one, in every game this year, and they have absolutely dominated Daniel Jones. He really hasn't had much to do against them, so that's not in the parlay, but we are going to consider that as well.
Absolutely. And I just want to touch on a little bit more about Daniel Jones. He has a really good offensive line. So if he gets a little bit of a hole or he has to roll out of the pocket, I think him running the football, like you said, just for a couple first downs is a possibility. So I don't hate that bet at all. And just so everyone knows, he's had at least 5 rush attempts to the first 3 games this season. Every game, he's had at least 5 rushing attempts. So if you want to take 5, go ahead. If you want to up the value a little bit, take 6. But now I also just wanted to touch on a couple of other things, guys. So now, even though we're not including these in the parlay, we just want to give 2 potential anytime touchdown scores tonight. And the first one we're going to be going with, obviously, we said it earlier, was Ezekiel Elliott, 11 touchdowns in 13 games against the Giants in his career. So the numbers match up well there. Obviously, he splits with Dowdle, so you don't really know who they're going to use, but Zeke usually is the goal line back. So if they get down in the red zone, it should be Zeke. So we're not going to put that in the parlay, but if you really like that, then you should hammer it right now on FanDuel. I have Ezekiel Elliott for an anytime touchdown score. His odds right now are plus 175 on FanDuel. So if you wanted to take that, you could. And then for another dark horse anytime touchdown score, we're going to go back to Brandon Cooks. And believe it or not, when you look at his numbers, he has 3 touchdowns in 5 games against the Giants. So he definitely has that potential to score. The Cowboys may be needing a lot of touchdowns in the red zone. If Dak can just get a deep ball to him, he can find the end zone. We're not going to hammer it just because it's not extremely likely to happen, but if you're going to take a touchdown score, we really like Elliott, and a dark horse would be Brandon Cooks. I would not be surprised if he finds the end zone tonight. Before I move over to Pat, I just want to talk about the line movement. This game opened up at the Cowboys minus 5.5. It got bumped down to 5, and as of right now, we had the line at 4.5, and that seems like a very bettable line. Me and Pat discussed this before we recorded, and we said that this is a big Cowboys victory, considering the fact that they've struggled recently. It's a divisional game on the road against a Giants team that Dak has played very well against. They need this game. It's almost like the Jets-Patriots last week. You almost think that the team that just won a game is going to cover, and obviously we see that trend with the public hammering and the line moving down. So we're going to hammer the Cowboys. I expect them to win by at least 14 points tonight or more. And I love that play as well.
Yeah, I mean, 14 is a lot, but I definitely agree with you that Dak is going to go to work here tonight. He's going to have a great game. Like we said, I think CD is going to be a huge part of that. I love the 4.5. I would have taken the 5.5, but sure, I'll take the 4.5 money line to be safe as well. So we're just going to do a little recap on the picks here. We got 5 picks tonight in the primetime parlay. So first, we got Malik Neighbors, 6 catches. CD Lamb on the other side, 70 to 75 receiving yards. Dak 2 or more touchdown passes. Daniel Jones at least 5 rush attempts. And Brandon Cooks closing out with the 3 receptions. For the spread, 4.5, we obviously get an extra point there. Dallas is 7-3 against the spread in the last 10 against the Giants. So I think they will have no problem covering tonight. And I think that, the Giants, they got their big win last week to kind of stay afloat. I don't see them going to 2-2 and the Cowboys dropping to 1-3 in a division that the Cowboys could win, especially with the shaky Eagles so far. They haven't played as well. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoy, and we'll see you in the next one.